Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. It's a little bit dark, I can tell. It may be brighter for you, but it feels a bit dark in my sewing room here. It is not the best lighting today because I get all of my light from my big window. That's my dog making noise. Alright, so today is going to be a scrap quilt. Well, I say scrap, but not scrap so much. Let me just fix myself. And I am going to be making a quilt as you go. Now, let me warn you, if it's the first time you're seeing my channel, I make my quilt as you go very different to what most of you are probably used to. All right, so mine is different. So I make mine in rows. However, today I will be using leftover pieces of what's scrabic? Fabric. So if you have leftover pieces like this is a beautiful piece, isn't it? It's a fake backing or piece fabric, I should say. I'm not liking how this is dark. I'm going to change the outlook. Still too dark. What is going on? That's better. Is it? Is it better? All right, so yeah, so this is what, no, it's not better. So this is the fabric, okay? So I'm going to be using pieces like this. So leftover, when it may be from fat quarters, yardage, you know, backing, whatever you have. Because you know you always get those pieces, don't you, whereby you need to make something out of it. You can either use it on scraps, cut them up, but I thought I would use it, okay? So what I have done to start the preparation is to take two pieces of fabric. So I'm using a light floral background. That's my dog. I don't know what he's doing. Should I go check? That was a really loud noise. Hold on. All right, so as soon as he saw me walking, he come running out to me. I think he threw down the Alexa. Shh. She didn't hear me. Anyway, so I'm using a background floral white, that there, and a piece at the front, same size, all right? And then I'm going to cut it. So I've already stitched it together all the way around. Let me back up a little bit, okay? Now, as I said, leftover bits. I'm then going to turn it into a block that looks like this. That's yummy, isn't it? Looks beautiful. That, love that. Okay, so, and then I'm going to sew it all together. So come with me, follow along, relax, enjoy, get a cup of tea or cup of coffee or glass of wine, depending on where you are at the moment and what time of day it is. I'm not encouraging you to drink, so don't say I'm you know, I am just talking about relaxation. Okay, and follow along. Let me know your feedback down below of what do you think of this quilt. I may add another type of block to it. I think will be a good idea because I want it to be different. I didn't want to use the same block. Be mindful that I am also using different colors. So we have this one as well, okay? I am using different colors because remember, as much as it's a scrap, it's also large pieces of scraps that I can make, or I'm giving you the idea that you can make use of. By the way, I have already put this pattern on YouTube. I will link the video. I have it as a short and I have it as a tutorial. So I would link both of them for you in the info card right there. And I will also link the video at the end of this video for you. So you have two ways of finding it, and that way you will be able to make it if you want to. All right. But I am going to make this one on screen with you. Well, I'm going to fast forward anyway because you might be bored if you've went ahead and watched the video already on how to make it. All right, so let's move on, but grab all of your extra bits of large scraps and let's get started.
giving me wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh, well, I don't wanna jinx it, baby, and twist myself at the spine. Don't wanna overthink it, baby. It's just twist your body and mine. Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're giving me wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry.
Alright, so now I'm about to make the other half of the set of blocks that I want to make for my quilt. And again, I'm just using up some leftover fabric. I have had this, guys, for at least 5 years now. Can you imagine that? How do we as quilters keep fabric for so long? I mean, I've been cherishing this for such a long time. Anyway, is it 5 years? Can't remember now. I think so. I think I bought it when I was in the UK. Long before. So we've been here, what, 2 years now? 2.5 years? And I think, yeah, I bought it long before we traveled. And my gosh. It's called Knit Together by Greta Lynn for Canvas. It's a beautiful fabric. I always wanted to make a Valentine's quilt with it, but I never really got around to using it for Valentine's. So hence the reason I kept putting it off and I said, right, every time, okay, yes, I would eventually make this quilt for Valentine's. Never got around to it. And so I've ended up using it in different pieces of quilts, you know, as a different block. And I'll insert a quilt I actually used it for, which was really beautiful. But yeah, 5 years. Imagine that. So this is like leftovers from it. And again, I've used it in other pieces as well, for like pieces of scraps. So this is the last set of remnants. So amazing, isn't it? How we keep these things for so long. My gosh. But hey, that's what we do. That is what we do. Cannot complain about that one. So I'm going to do one more cut and get this over with. But it's such a beautiful piece of fabric. It really, really is. And it's really soft as well. Yeah, I remember ordering it from my local sewing shop. In the UK, there isn't much quilting shops, to be honest. You will get like little fabric stores and stuff. And but you don't get really like a quilting store. You know, we haven't really got that there, which is a bit disappointing, to be honest, because I tell you, if we did, be excellent. But you can buy really beautiful fabrics online in the UK, which of course you can do anywhere. But most of our stores for sewing is just like a lot of sewing items. Fabric is fabric, isn't it? But I wouldn't identify them as my local quilt store. Yeah, I didn't really have any experience in those, because one of my excitements with moving to Australia was being able to go to an actual quilt store. So in the UK, I didn't really experience much of that, but nevertheless, it is okay, isn't it? Because you live and you learn, as they say. You live and you learn. Right, so I'm going to again just cut the size that I want. And then why did I do that? I can't believe I just did that. I folded the edge. That's when you're chatting and not concentrating. I folded the edge of this one on the other edge there, and then I cut it in preparation to cut my width. because I was trimming off the edge to make sure it lined up properly. And now I'm going to do the same thing again. So busy chatting and not concentrating. So let's do this properly. Measure that across. Does anybody else count like me? I am so worried about miscounting. I literally take it as count twice, cut once. Well, in my case, probably count 3 times, but I do it religiously because I just do not want to mess up, you know. I hate wasting the fabrics. Fabrics is so expensive, and to not use it wisely. Plus, I am not a waster by normal, really. I don't like wasting stuff. I wouldn't say I'm a miser. I wouldn't go that far, but I just don't like wasting stuff. I guess it's the way I was brought up, because my mom used to be like, "Don't waste it." That's what I used to hear all the time. You know, don't waste stuff. I don't need that because it's not really the size that I want. So yeah, we were brought up not to waste stuff, and so it's embedded in me, you know. Don't waste, because you don't know when you'll need it again. That is what we used to hear. You don't know when you'll need it again. Be grateful. God has blessed you with it, you know, and if God sees you not taking care of it, then he can't bless you again because you don't appreciate what you have. So that's what our mom used to say to us. So yeah, so in a sense you were kind of, I wouldn't say forced, but you know, you were taught that it's important not to waste and to be appreciative of what you have. Don't be, you know, as they say, green eye envy about what other people's have. Just be happy with what you have, and when the time comes, when it's your turn, you will get what is owing to you. It's what my mum used to say, never be envious. And these are the things I've you know, taught my kids by, and myself, you know. If you want to achieve something, you just work towards it. Nothing's wrong with that. Nothing's wrong with wanting to achieve a goal. I do believe that without goals, our souls is limited. You know, it's just the fact that there's no fire within us to want to achieve stuff if we just simply don't have a goal. You know, there's no excitement to life. So I think working towards a goal, especially as a couple as well, it really helps, doesn't it? Share with me down below, guys. What do you think about what I just said? Do you think it's exciting, you know, or probably not exciting, but it's worthwhile as peace of mind to really have a goal and work towards it? And I think for me, that's one of the ways I actually prosper. You know, I love to be able to achieve the things that I am working on or plan to work on, and it keeps me inspired. Definitely. And I think for me, that's why I love about quilting. It does that, doesn't it? It makes you see what you can do when you believe in yourself, and to just simply try and achieve the goal. Yeah, just try and achieve the goal, and then once you get it, imagine how much more you feel better about yourself. That's what I used to say to my students. That was my tactic in order to get them to do their studies. I used to say to them, imagine for a minute, and I used to go really heavily into it. I used to say to them, close your eyes. I say, close your eyes and take the moment to exam results day. I'm going to come close to the camera so I can give you the visual. And they used to listen to me. They used to say, "Ma'am, I think you've gone cuckoo." That's what they used to say to me. And I used to be like, no. I say to them, listen, It's getting serious now. I'm taking off my glasses. I say to them, listen, close your eyes. Take yourself, and this is a class roughly about 30 kids. Take yourself to exam results day. You come into the school, all of your friends are there, every year, group person that you know on that day. Because usually it's roughly about, what, let me see, about 100, 200 kids, can't remember exactly how much, could be more, will be getting their final exam results before they move on to the next stage in their life, college. So I would say, imagine yourself on that day. You're not wearing school uniform. You're in your casual clothing. You see all your friends after the end of the summer holidays. You come in to get your results on results day. How are you feeling? What is your emotion? I said, don't want you to answer me. Just tell me. How are you feeling? And I said, picture this. You know to yourself you didn't put in the work that is required of you. How are you feeling? Are you anxious? Are you nervous? Are you excited? Are you scared? Think about how do you want to feel. So I'll say to them, now change that picture, knowing very well that before exam day, you studied, you've done all that you're supposed to do to make sure, I can't say guarantee, but make sure you've got the best grades that you possibly can. How are you feeling? And then I will say to them, open your eyes, express to me now, how are you feeling? And they will say, you know what, ma'am? When I saw myself receiving negative results, I was really sad. And my worry was, what will my mom and dad think? And I said, well, you know what? In order to change that thought process, in order to change that narrative with your parents that you would have, 6 months from now, 8 months from now, 10 months from now, a year from now, you need to work now in order so that you can change it. And that is how I used to get them to literally focus on their goals, because I wanted them to see the disappointment on their faces, the disappointment on their parents' faces, so that they can do something about it. And I think the more if we do things like that, to really visualize, that's why we learn so differently, because as a visual learner, if you can visualize what you want and reach out and take it, you've already won. So that's things I used to do, and I still do that today. If I want to achieve a goal, I visualize the feeling, I visualize how excited I'm going to be to share it with others. And that's what happens when it comes to my quilts. I was like so excited to share it with you guys. And sometimes I didn't even edit the video properly. I was like, yeah, I just gotta get it out there. Just like this one. All right. So what I'm gonna do is take this and this and sew it together and make some half square triangles. Let's get going. Okay, so once you've made all your blocks, you need to decide on your layout. So this is the layout I am going with. So what I'm going to do is to sew the rows together, and then from there we're going to start making the quilt as you go. Alright, so let's move on to the next stage now. So as you can see, I have my batting there, and I have my 3 rows, or my 3 blocks sewn together in one row, and I've added a top border. Now bearing in mind that it's not sewn together, so I'm referring to the border here, the top border, and my row here, which again is not adhered to the batting. Now what I have done to make things easier for myself is to, once I laid it out, so I laid out the blocks individually first and figure out the placement. And once I was happy, then I sewed my rows together with whatever pattern was formed in the middle of the quilt. So I then went ahead and identified my row as row 1. This is to ensure that I will not mix it all up again. All right, so just get that in your mind. Now, just so that you know, this is the first row with the border, as you would do normally when you are making a quilt. You will make a quilt top, you would add your top border, and then you would add your bottom border and proceed to add the side borders. Okay, in this instance, because we're making it a quilt as you go, in rows, and compiling the quilt top in pieces so that it's easier to fit under your throat space. All right, it also eliminates the longer process of quilting each individual block on the batting and then sewing it together, which gives you a lot more seams. So this eliminates that process. Okay, so what I'm going to do next now is to simply sew these front sides together, like so, just as I would normally. I could do either two things. I can take this whole thing, pin my row down, all right, and then go to the sewing machine and do my first stitch there. I can do that. Or I can literally take it up and sew it on as normally, and then bring it back, place it, then quilt the whole thing. All right, so giving you lots of options here of how you can do this. Okay, now what you also need to consider is to remove this excess, because we don't need that excess there. So I would say leave about an inch, or at least half of an inch to the edge of the row of the quilt top, your first row. So just leave a quarter of an inch there, or half of an inch. It doesn't matter as long as you leave a little bit of excess. The reason being is so that we can join the other one. Okay, so hence the reason you don't need that amount. So what I am going to do though is I am going to take it off and just sew it there first, and then I'm going to bring it back, and then we'll move on from there. All right, so at this stage, what I have done now is just simply put the two pieces together, and I've placed it onto the batting. Okay, it's important to leave a huge gap to the side here, because this is where the extra border for the side goes on. All right, and as well on the other side down there. Okay, now you can do two things again. So notice again, I haven't pin it or glue base it at the moment. I'm just making sure everything is set before I do any further cuts. Now the next stage, and remember this is the first row, this is row 1. So the next stage now is to sew on your side border here. Okay, and all I'm going to do, I've already made my cut, so all I'm going to do is measure it, place it down, flip it over, and sew. Now I'm going to cut first, because I think that makes it nice and structured and straight. So I'm going to place it on and then cut it. I'm going to add a bit of pins. And just to make sure it doesn't move, which I don't think it will, because it also tends to grip to it because of the batting. But just as a precaution, I'm just going to add a few pins, all right? And I'm just simply going to trim it off, all right? And I'll do the same for the other side. Now the same decision applies. You can either sew it on there. Had I sewn it onto the batting, I would have gone to the sewing machine and do all in one and sit there and just sew it on. Or again, I could just simply take the whole thing off to the sewing machine. That is the now all three parts, border, row, side border, and then simply just sew it on, bring it back, and do what I just did originally. Okay, so that's the decision you can make. Either way, the concept is the same. It's just whatever makes you happy. All right, so I'm going to trim and cut, and then we'll move on to the next stage. All right, so let's move on now. Okay, so you're looking at this and you think, well, what has changed? Well, nothing. What I have done here is to create a piece backing. So I have my front sides down here. Okay, and all I've done literally is taken random strips of fabric. Remember, this is using up leftover scraps of fabric. So I like to make a cohesive scrappy quilt, meaning I like to use everything that I possibly can for the front as well as the back if I have it. In this instance, I do. So all I have done is taken strips of fabric and I have measured where I want it to go, ensuring it reached the end on this side and on the other side over here. Okay, once I'm happy with that, I'm just going to sew it together and it will become relatively the first top backing. Okay, now I'm sure you're realizing that the whole thing will be different pieces because it is a creative back. Now let's go back to the front just so that you see what it looks like. So this is it here. Okay, again, I have not done anything as yet in terms of cutting it. I'm going to do that on the camera with you now. So I'm going to remove all of this. I know what the layers are and how I've laid them out. So I will then just start to sew that strip together and we will return to how we're going to add the back. All right, so the front side is done here. All I'm going to do is to baste it as I would normally. Alright, so we're going to do the back now. So I've stitched the rows for the piece backing and I'm just simply going to line it up on the batting and glue baste as normal. Alright, so now that I have both sides, now normally when I do my quilt as you go, I would only do the front, okay, of the quilt, and I will start to quilt the whole thing. Alright, so basically what I'm saying is once I have pieced and added on my first row onto the batting, I will then go and quilt it. In this instance, I'm doing it differently. I'm adding my backing at the same time. So what I'm going to do now is on my domestic sewing machine, all I'm going to do is do some straight line quilting. You can either at this stage draw some lines on, use the lines in the actual pattern themselves. You can draw on some crisscross lines and a slant, so use a heat erasable pen and just draw it on and just do stitch in the ditch. Either way, it doesn't really matter. You can do free motion quilting. The objective here is that you have your first top row done and you will do the same for the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, however much you have. The only difference with this method is that you now have to join each of the rows with the backing, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Down below in the description box, I would link the other method whereby we only do the top piece with the batting and then we do a whole backing. All right, so I will link that in the bottom or at the end of the video so you can see what it looks like. I'll put a picture of the video of that particular quilt. Right, okay, so I'm using my walking foot here for this. You can use any utility stitch, it's entirely down to you. At this stage, you can use free motion if you want and use a darning foot, or you can do stitch in the ditch. It's entirely down to you, as I said. But the objective here, you now have your first row underneath your throat space, which enables you to quilt a large quilt quite easily. Alright, so what I've started doing here is to trim away the excess batting that's left from the quilted row. Alright, you will have excess batting. What I would require you to do is to trim that to about 1 inch in width. Now there are 2 ways of doing this, and I will show you on one of them. And I'll show you both ways on either or, and you can make a decision. But for now, the most important thing you need to do is to trim away the batting on the top row and the bottom row, leaving the excess, okay? For the middle row, however, you can trim away the batting and trim away the backing and quilt top to the edge, so everything is nice and even, as you see here. Okay, so that's the only difference, is that you trim away all the edges from the middle row. And just going back to the excess batting here, I'm actually using scissors just to run it very gently along the edge and trim. If you are going to use your rotary cutter, you will need to fold this area here back, tuck it away basically, so you don't trim it or add a hole to it. But for just to avoid a mishap, I just simply put my scissors right along that groove there and just simply cut it very gently. Alright, so as a precaution, what you need to do when you go to sew is to make sure you're sewing this way up. The reason why I'm saying that is because if you are sewing this way down, it's very likely that you may catch the extra here. Okay, so to avoid any issues, I always sew with the extra backing fabric looking up at me, and I can see it clearly, and I can align my 1/4 inch feet or whatever machine feet I'm using to ensure that I don't catch this at all. So I've pinned now, and I'm simply just going to sew a straight stitch and come back. Alright, so the next stage now is to trim off the excess here. Remember I said we needed about 1 inch. So what you can do, because I've sewn it on, alright, it's sewn together, front sides together as I said. However, to just make sure you get 1 inch, I mean it doesn't have to be exactly, I would say 1 inch and slightly above is over. I wouldn't advise you to go under, okay, and you would realize why. But to find out what the edge is, you can simply feel it, you know, and you would feel the rough edges, or the trimmed edge I should say. And all I'm going to do is just line up one of my lines here and just trim off the excess. So I'm lining it up from the edge where I can actually feel. I'll try and tuck it in like so you can actually see it where the edge actually stops there on the camera. This is for your benefit. I wouldn't normally do this. Normally I would just open it flat on my mat and trim, but just to make sure that the comprehension is there, I would definitely do it this. So I'm just tucking it in so I can feel the edges and just simply measure 1 inch from my black line there to the edge of the ruler and just trim away. Now you can use your scissors, but for speedy purposes I'll just use my rotary cutter and cut. Now bearing in mind it's folded together, so I'm doing the whole half of the quilt at this stage. All right, because remember I've only sewn on just I've sewn on the top and middle border. The bottom or the last row is still to be stitched together. All right, but I wanted to show you how to do this now. So once we have joined it together, we need to hide the raw edge. So I'm going to open it up. Let's get out of the way. I'm going to open it up so you can see where it is. So this is your middle row. This is your top row here. As you can tell, I think I did mention is a piece backing we're doing, so hence the reason why it looks like that. Now you can do two things here. You can add an iron and flatten this down, because yes, it is a little bit bulky because we got the batting here as well as the top and front of the quilt. All right, sorry, we have the what's wrong with me? We have the batting. I always get that word confused with the backing. Too many B's. Binding, backing, batting. Too many B's. It's a tongue twister. So, as I was saying, let's get serious, Karen. Stop it. Somebody will tell you off in the comments below. Be serious. So, what I was saying is you can add a warm iron here just to flatten this down if it bothers you. But in all honesty, you may flatten it with an iron and make it a little bit more pliable, but the bulk is still going to remain. All right. However, you now need to fold over using the excess that we just left behind to hide that raw edge, and we're going to bring it over like so. All right, and that's it basically. So you're folding twice. So once to hide that raw edge, the second time is to cover. And when I say the first raw edge is the raw edge of the leftover fabric here, the backing fabric, and the second fold is to cover the raw edge of the 3 layers together. Okay, so that's one way you can do it. Of course, at this stage, Jackson, stop. At this stage, you do need your pins. Jackson, can you cut it out, please? At this stage, you need your pins, and once you've pinned the whole thing down, I would advise you to pin, or if you're confident enough to just go on the machine and sew immediately, by all means you can do that. But just fold. Then this is why I say 1 inch is enough, because you get a nice neat fold with the 1 inch and it's consistent. All right, and you just simply pin it down. Now once you're completed pinning, you will then do another stitch on the top here. So where the fold is, you will do a stitch there. You can, if you want, do another straight stitch, 2 on each side. But to be honest, you've already stitched it together where you've joined already. But you can. Okay, if you feel more secure, or if you think that will make it look a lot more neater, you can do it that way. Now, the other way I think you can do this, which is you could now, in this the second example, right, and to me that looks pretty neat there, as you can see where I've pinned it. It's a piece backing at the end of the day, all right? So this here is not going to be unsightly in the sense that it's going to be taking away anything from the quilt. It is a piece backing. All right, if you were going to use a whole backing, then I would definitely say use a darker fabric, and then you can do your folds, or you can do what I'm going to suggest now. Now, because it's a piece backing, you could use, I'm just going to use some scraps just to demonstrate what I am saying to you. I'm just going to use some scraps here. So I have some scraps of strips here at 2.5, and what you can do in this case, you can either fold it in half like so, and you can take it, fold it in half like so, folding both edges in. So that's one edge. You can iron it all down. In fact, let me do this properly. All right, so for the next idea, this is what you can do. So imagine for a minute that you haven't got the excess here, all right, and you've trimmed it away, and both of the panels, let's refer to them as that, the panels for the middle row and the top row is neck to neck, all right, back to back, and they're just flat, and there's nothing else, there's none of this here. One of the ways in which you can do it, you can get some 2.5-inch strips, and all I have done is press the edges into the middle. Hopefully you can see that a lot more clearly there. All right, you can use the same strip of fabric. All right, let's say for example you're doing a whole back piece, not a piece backing, and you can get an extra piece of that fabric, cut it to 2.5-inch strip, and simply fold the edges in, and I have literally ironed it down so it stays. And in this example, all you would do literally is put it on top, in the middle like so, and you will stitch on both edges. And there you would have covered your raw edges from both of the two pieces joined together. So either way it works, whatever makes you happy. One of the reasons why I've made a change is that some people have said that they don't necessarily like this method here, whereby you just fold it over. Well, I've given you another option, all right? The decision is yours as to which method you go with. Either way, I think both works. For me personally, both works, all right? And once you have simply stitched it on, you will just give it a nice iron, press it all down, make sure it's nice and flat, and Bob's your uncle. As we say in England, Bob's your uncle. Okay, so that's it basically. But since I have the edges here, I will carry it on, and I do like this fabric here. It's pretty cool. All right, so that's it. So I will do the same for the rest, and I'll come back, add the binding on, which I wouldn't demonstrate that because I think everyone knows how to add binding on, and then I will show you the whole quilt top. And that is it. Okay, so I have my normal utility feet on here. Just as another example, you can use that. So as I'm sewing, and as I get nearer the pins, obviously, I am removing them. My stitch length here is 2.5, which I think is okay. It's moving, it's not giving me any struggles. Had it given me any struggles, I definitely would have increased it to probably 3. Let me just show you the stitch length there. So it is 2.5, excuse me. So the stitch length allows the machine feet to glide easily over all the layer of the fabrics. All right, so I'm using 2.5, but I think it's not giving me any restrictions, so I'm just going to continue with it. And you would know if you have any restrictions, it will be a bit slow. You'll feel it really tight. You'll feel that it's not moving in reference to the speed that you have your machine on. Okay, what I would say though, as a precaution, is if you're using a different thread for the top of your quilt top, And if you notice now, it's at the back, isn't it? So this is the back of the quilt, so which means my top thread is now going to be at the back of the quilt. Nevertheless, for me, I'm using the same color thread, so it's not an issue. But I'm just saying this to you in case you have blue at the top and then white at the back, for example. So if you were to swap the quilt around, then obviously now you would have your blue to the back of the quilt. I hope that makes sense. Just as a precaution, because sometimes these are the things you only remember once you start sewing. So just continue with that until you get to the end. Give it a press and then move on to the next one. And as you can see, one of the reasons for pinning before is that it glides on there really easily. And it's already folded, isn't it? So there is no major issues really in doing this particular technique, right? So because you fold it before, and all you're doing really is sewing. All right, so let's demonstrate the other technique now. All right, so for the other technique, I'm going to trim away the extra backing fabric here. So this is the bottom layer. So line it up to the edge and just use my rotary cutter and trim it away. It's a simple. All right, so to show you the next side now. So remember, we already did the folded over technique for the first joining here, and you can see it right there. You can see where it's folded over, all right, and hidden that raw edge. Okay, now for the other one, this is the raw edge here. So you saw me cut it edge to edge with both of the two pieces of the quilt top. All right, and I've some now. That's it at the front. All right, so this is now completed. This quilt measures 48 inches squared. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. I've added 4 extra large pinwheels to tie in with the double pinwheel block. Just looks really awesome. Colors really play off well on each other. Bearing in mind that this is a quilt made from leftover scraps or leftover fabric, all right, whatever you want to associate it as. Now, when I say leftover, as I explained, I literally haven't got any more of these. This is what was left from whether it may be backing or an extra fat quarter, etc., or leftover yardage. All right, so anywhere I could have gotten to make the block is what I did, but it turned out beautifully. Love it, love it, love it. It's a nice picnic quilt, to be honest. I love it. It's really bright, it's summery, and it's just really warming and, you know, really inviting. I love the colors. Very subtle as well. Suitable for a girl or even a baby quilt, may I add. You know, very, very lovely. But it's really nice. Now, this new improved quilt as you go technique here on the back is really lovely. Now, before we turn it at the back, I want to know if you can tell the difference by looking at the joining as to which was the new one. Okay, now I can't really tell, and what I really want you to comprehend here is the fact that these quilt as you go that I do is really to help you to be able to use your domestic sewing machine, you know, and still do straight line quilting and still make beautiful quilts. That's the objective here. You know, it's not to think that even if you do meandering, you can still do a quilt as you go. And you can make large quilts using my technique, which I have shown already, and I will link that video at the end also. But looking at it now, you cannot see which is the different joining. So in reality, anyone can work, really. Anyone can work. It really depends on what pleases you. As you can see, it's all straight line stitching, and it's just turned out really beautifully. I just love it. What a beautiful little quilt. Just love the colors in this block here. Really, really nice. Really, really nice. I think the larger pinwheels really ties into the whole overall presentation of the quilt. Now, looking at this, you will not know it was completed in rows. You will not know that. You think it was completed the conventional way. I use the same color. In fact, I've used up all of this now. So it's all done on the binding, as you can tell. And I think that really ties in. Really lovely. The joining is just amazing. Cannot tell any mishaps at all. Nothing. Alright guys, so I hope this really helps in doing a quilt as you go, and the new idea and the new technique in joining the rows. Let's turn it over and see what it looks like. Now tell me this piece backing doesn't make the quilt. Piece backing with a quilt as you go. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. You have now gotten two beautiful quilts. One at the front, one at the back. And you can decide which one you want to use. You have a traditional piecing at the front and a non-traditional scrap back. Absolutely gorgeous. This is how you use up your fabrics. This is how you use your fabrics. How creative is that? Look how these colors really work for each other. Now, if you don't remember, this is the second technique, binding here, whereby I put it on top of the raw edge, and beautiful. It plays in with the piece backing. This is the fold over here. Now, doesn't that look really well? So it really has been simplified, this quilt as you go technique here. Really has been simplified. Look at this, it's so amazing. A beautiful little quilt, but yet commands so much. You cannot tell me this is not beautiful. This is really awesome. Really awesome. Just loving it. And again, you can see all of those quilting lines here. And this did not take long to make. For those of you who's going to say, oh, I use the same thing, it's going to take longer. No, this is really stress-free quilting. It really is. You will enjoy using my method, I promise you. Because the amount of people who've told me that they now can sew and quilt using their sewing machine and don't have to worry about sending it to a long arm. And yes, you can still use a large quilt on this method. Definitely. Absolutely gorgeous, guys. Really gorgeous. All the colors just plays in beautifully. Really nice. So if this video brought you any value, guys, do let me know down below. Leave me a heart to say, Karen, well done. Love the new idea. Love the new technique. Love the quilt as you go piece backing. You've gotten so many ideas from this video. You've got a double pinwheel block. You've got a new way of adding on your binding for your joining your rows, and you've got another idea in making a piece backing for a quilt as you go. Now, that is what you call value for a free video. Alright guys, do let me know your feedback down below. Leave me a heart, let me know what you think, and also let me know you watch this video to the end. I look forward to hearing your feedback. Bye for now, happy quilting, and I'll definitely see you in the new one. So gorgeous, so gorgeous. Really love it. Really love it. Beautiful quilt, and literally love the front. Just so brilliant. Just so brilliant. Look at that. Really look at that. Wow. Sometimes I always say it. Quilting really amazes me. It never stops. It never stops. What fabric can do. Alright guys, I'll see you in the next one. Happy quilting. Love you loads.
time.